Okay, I'll answer this one. Is while we were in the car driving, basically what we would do is you see a spot of road that is scenic or whatever captures that type of landscape, whether you're driving through Nebraska or the mountains or the seaside or wherever it happens to be. You drop Rodney off, you drive down the road, and you turn around at the first spot you can get to. We had walkie-talkies, and so you walkie-talkie them, hopefully if they were working, and you let them know, okay, we're starting, and you drive by, and you'd maybe do that 2 or 3 times. Like the first shots of the van driving through Times Square, we must have driven through Times Square, maybe at least a half a dozen times, maybe more. Rodney would be on one corner, then he'd be in the van, then he'd be out, and switching around like that. The drive-through tree, I've been through that drive-through tree more times than I can count. I'm very good at it. And then the other thing about the drive, Roger had his trip plan, and I used that, and the idea was to have the entire movie feel like a day. And so we broke down driving versus seeing stuff versus eating. And as a percentage, I had mapped out so we knew when we're driving through the Redwoods, we're going to take time to do driving shots. When we're in Florida, we're going to do at the Kennedy Space Center, that's visiting stuff. And so some spots were slated for, we're going to do more driving here. Other spots were slated for, scenery. Some spots we tried to do more of, here's eating or that type of thing. And that kind of worked out that way. As an example, on my spreadsheet, the Grand Canyon was allocated 15 seconds. We ended up with a little bit more than that. Or the car breaking down in Colorado ends up being more. The next day when we drove from Pikes Peak down to Four Corners into the Grand Canyon, we didn't have time to stop the car and get out to do a driving shot. So that's where it was all in the windshield looking out. And there are a few places like that we didn't have time to stop and get out. Utah from Las Vegas to Arches National Park. We stopped at fast food, otherwise it was in the car the entire day without even 5 minutes, and we barely made the sun coming down at the arch. So anyway, that's kind of a long answer to how we did the car shots.
I think I saw another person. Yep, there you go.
I know you enjoyed all 50 of your stops, but what was your most special stop?
I knew I was going to get that question. And people keep asking me that question, and I don't have an answer yet. Well, usually the question is phrased, what's your favorite state? And I always stumble into Minnesota because it's home. But there were so many places. But I think the story that I always end up telling people when I start telling about the trip was the Ford's Theater situation that we ended up in, because it was so completely unexpected. And it was so cool to be that close to getting into the presidential box, where, as a history buff, as somebody who's interested in the Civil War and presidential history in particular. So that was really something that was so cool to be able to do and so unexpected. And yeah, we kind of always also, Nebraska comes up, and Haley says that Nebraska was, the biggest surprise. But I think who you're with is more important than where you are. And we cover big stuff, Grand Canyon and all of that. Also Carhenge and the biggest ball of twine makes a cameo. Big or little, it's, I guess, the attitude you bring to it. And there is something we joke about Delaware and some other states, and anywhere you go, I think there's something cool to see. You just have to open your eyes to see it. Oh, that was profound. Record that.
Another question. Yes.
So at what point during the editing process did you do the interview? How did that shape the story or reflect the story?
Well, we kind of started with just a very rough edit, just throwing in raw footage in the order. Unlike other fictional films where you shoot out of order, this whole thing was shot in order. But so we kind of just started throwing in footage, getting in as much as we could, and it was like 6 months or more. No, it was
longer than you had wanted.
Longer than I wanted. I wanted it to be 6 months. That's what it was. No, it was like about 10 months later, and we sat down and we just started cranking out interviews, and they weren't really interviews, not as much as Rodney wanted. It was just us, here's what was happening. I wanted it to be as genuine as possible, in part because of the limitations on how much you can shoot during the trip we don't have footage of Haley and I interacting like that, like we can, and like you see in the interview stuff. So when we're sitting in on a couch and we're plugged into the computer and we can record as much footage as we want, let's capture that stuff there, and we can get that on screen and capture that interaction, because that really is the reason that I wanted to have a travel partner to begin with. As I said at the beginning of the movie, me by myself just talking to the camera is going to bore people to death, no matter how interesting I think it is. But to get someone else that can be passionate about and be learning about what I'm doing, and for them to share with me their passions, and then you get that interaction that is genuine. So. Yeah, we did the interviews in, I think, 4 sections, and so that's an example of, I would have loved to scripted the whole thing because it's easier, and Roger wanted the genuineness that you don't see in, a lot of things where it's a talking head in front of, a green screen or whatever. I wanted to do a green screen too. Anyway, so an example, again, I'll go back to the Grand Canyon. I think we talked about in the interview section the Grand Canyon for like 10 minutes. And I have, the Grand Canyon of the movie is maybe 45 seconds. So you got to take that 10 minutes of them talking and say, well, which part of it's important, and chop that down. And the whole movie is that way. Figuring out what's going to work and blending it all in with the picture and making it all work together.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your plans for the movie? I know that you screened at a couple festivals, and now you're here, and I'm assuming you're probably going to take the movie and travel to places. And is there any other projects that you've been noodling around, and what maybe can you tell us about those?
The ultimate goal, when we started this, we talked about briefly Roger's website. He has pictures of himself in front of every historic and national monument in the entire country, and he gets a lot of traffic to his website. So when we started this, we looked at the numbers of visitors to his website, said, well, if we sold to 1% of them at $9 a piece, we could make enough money off DVD sales from his website to pay for the trip. So that was kind of our safety net. So that's the minimum goal, is to get it done on DVD. And of course, now we have streaming video and all of that. Perhaps, people seeing it would open some doors, and someone might see it and want to buy it, or who knows. And then I'm working on a trailer for it finally. And then Roger, the next thing, I'll hand it off to Roger, but he's got the next project, kind of a sequel already in mind. Yeah, well, I've got a dozen ideas in my head, of course, at any one time for trips and places that I want to go. But as far as the next big movie idea that I want to do, a travel documentary, I want to do what's called Welcome to America, North, South, East, West. And unlike 50 States, 50 Days, where it's just me and one other person traveling together throughout the whole thing, it would be primarily me, and I would travel to the geographic extreme points of the country. So from Point Barrow, Alaska, and Key West, Florida, and the extreme north, south, east, west points. In each segment of the trip, or over the course of the different segments, I would travel with different people and get to know them. The problem with 50 States, 50 Days and meeting people along the way, again, like Rodney said, you have about 2 minutes worth of footage on screen at the end for every day. There's not enough time for an audience to get to know these people, or for us to get to know them on the trip, to really make any kind of an impact with an audience like you can with 2 people over the course of the whole movie. But doing something like North, South, East, West, I would have a little bit more time where I would be able to get to know them, hopefully have them share things with me about who they are that would impact me and allow me to see my country in a different way than I might share with Haley or whatnot. And ultimately, North, South, East, West then becomes a metaphor for the underlying idea of getting to know different people and where are they in life, and where have they come from, and where are they going in its direction in life. And I would end the trip in Hawaii and meet up with Haley, and so she'd be in it. And so that's the idea, and so I'm looking for people who want to share America with me.
I'm sure you have a whole bunch of people out there that would want to do that. Gentlemen, excellent work. Put your hands together for Rodney and Roger Johnson. I think you guys will be hanging around a little bit afterwards, and then, as I said, later on tonight, there'll be a lot more people at Cooper. I think there's one more question, right?
I had one more comment. In the movie, Haley makes a comment about how connected we are, even when we're traveling, and she's Skyping with, and she didn't say where he was, but he was, like, he's traveling the world. That guy, where was he?
It's Haley's friend Gary. and he's got a travel blog called Everything Everywhere. And he started his trip around the world at about the same time we were doing ours. And he traveled for 2 years, and now he's continued on to do that. And he was talking to us, video chatting with us, and he does say it in the video, and it's kind of tough to hear, but he was in an island in the South Pacific chatting to us live as we were driving down the freeway. And yeah, the ability to connect with people like that in a way that a few years ago was not possible. And Cindy's holding up her phone. Is Haley on the other end of that? Is that?
She's not on the phone, but she texted me.
Oh, okay. She had a question.
Anything you want, she doesn't have a question.
Oh, okay.
She said, anything you want to tell the crowd, and she said, and anybody that knows Haley will get this one right away. It says, stay classy, love you all, and of course, never stop exploring your world.
There we go. That's a good note to end on, I think.
Excellent. Put your hands together again for Rodney and Roger. Excellent work, guys. We're proud to have you.